What's going on, everybody? Welcome. Today is Tuesday. It is June 21st, 2022. My name is Jeremy, and this is my first cup. <sighs> 21st, so that makes it the first day of summer and the solstice, right? 45 degrees. Welcome to Vermont. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Gad. Good morning, Dennis, and all the rest of you, whether you're watching live later or listening. Thank you for joining me. The bird, the saga of the bird, day 7 of the bird. Bird is getting more aggressive. If bird was larger, I would be concerned that it would be breaking the glass and getting into my house. It really wants to come inside. I don't know what to do. I genuinely don't know what to do. I lost at least a half hour of sleep this morning, and that's been every day. Very frustrating. Good morning, Jenny and Gad and John. And Gad says time to flip the bird. Nope, that one. And good morning, Mike. Yeah. I'm honestly not sure how to handle this. So if any of you have suggestions, I'm open to them. Any kind of aggressive action at the bird is unlikely to be effective, given that it's at a window, and I'd rather not destroy my window. Good morning, Stacy. But I think there's a lesson in here, not one that I really feel like learning, but I think the bird is illustrating something in that a very small action done consistently can have dramatic effect. This is having an impact on my well-being, my health, my sanity. I think I've said it before on the show. I feel like I'm in a really bad Edgar Allan Poe knockoff. This is not the Raven. This is not the Telltale Heart. This is the really annoying little bird at the window. I have to shut the door to the bedroom while I do the show, because otherwise I hear him. And it's just distracting. Sits on the grapevines, doesn't hurt the grapevines. He's not trying to make a nest. He's trying to get in the house. I don't know why. He's becoming desensitized to me. So, yeah. Who knows? Yesterday was Monday. Did you check out yesterday's episode of Martial Arts Radio with Hanchi Jerry Piddington? Those of you that I got feedback from loved it. So, which I knew would happen because it was an amazing episode. This guy tells incredible stories, and we probably could have sat down for, 4, 6, 8 hours and chatted, and it would have been fun. All right, so we got some suggestions coming in here. Kelly says, get one of those squawking crows to scare him off. Farmers use them. He is not concerned by crows because he is surrounded by them. There are at least a dozen crows that call my land their home, and they're all over the place, and they are within feet of him. Doesn't bother him. Stacy says, a wildlife rehab person. How do you catch a bird? I could call them up, whatever that person is. I mean, it's one thing to relocate a harmful animal, but I can't fathom calling up and saying, "Hey, this bird's tapping on my window and it's disturbing my sleep," and anybody taking me seriously. Good morning, Andy. Jenny says, "Quote the annoying bird, never settle." I love it. John suggesting that I hang a sheet on the outside of my window for a few days. That's it. Blocking from the outside. That's an interesting idea. It's probably the best idea yet. Some kind of obstruction, and hopefully it loses interest. And it's consistent through the day. This is not just a morning thing. It does not happen overnight. It doesn't happen when it's dark, and I imagine that's because the bird is asleep somewhere in its nest. Okay. So Mike says, funny solution was I simply let the bird in, then the bird wanted out, never came back. Huh. Huh. I'm not convinced that's a bad idea. That might be a good idea. I'm going to have to think about that. Yeah, it says, what if you get a roller shutter that might deter the bird from further shenanigans? Plus, it blocks sunlight when it gets too hot. I have grapevines over those windows and 2 layers of curtains on the inside. It's the south side of the house, so I've had to deal with the heat. The bedroom stays pretty cool. So, and I'd have to really hack back those grapevines to get a shutter on there. Some kind of physical obstruction is in here. Good morning, Brian. Kelly's asking what kind of a bird. I don't know birds well, but this seems to be some kind of a finch. Brown and white spots, round body, pointy beak. Is undeterred by yelling. Now, in today's show, we've got some stuff from Frank. It is National Daylight Appreciation Day. We're going to talk about vitamin D. And yesterday on the Facebook page, I posted a hypothetical question that only some of you were able to wrap your brain around for some reason about what if you were going to be thrown into combat and you had a couple weeks to prepare. What would you do? Of course, I concocted a scenario that made that possible. Really unlikely. But I always have to anticipate all the weird objections and loopholes you guys are going to look for. So I got to come up with some funky things. So we'll talk about that later as well. I want to know what you did. So yesterday I worked through, this has taken so long. So many of you know, we have a few training programs. One of them is the flexibility program, what we call Whistlekick Flex. It is completely free. It's available at whistlekick.com. But because that is such a strong entry point for people into what we do. For a lot of people, it is their first real contact with Whistlekick. We decided that we needed to make it better. I reshot videos a month ago. I finally finished the editing on them yesterday. I'm going to send them off to Chris to take a look, see if we need to make them even better. But we're going to take Whistlekick Flex and we're going to move it forward. We're going to make the videos are better. We're going to make the document better. The protocol itself isn't going to change because it doesn't need to, because it works. It's effective. I might make a few small adjustments, but I don't think so. And so we'll roll out version 2 of that, which will be almost entirely aesthetic changes. So if you have Whistlekick Flex, you're not going to care. If you don't, you shouldn't wait because it's just visuals. The program works. If you want to get more flexible and not put in a ton of time every day and develop something sustainable and not injure yourself and not feel like you've got to crank your body into positions it wasn't meant to go into, that's what this is for. Gad says, how does it sit when it does its thing? It's sitting on the grapevines, and it has taken to attacking the windows even without the grapevines. So I do not, even if I was to remove my grapevines, which would make me incredibly sad, I don't believe it would stop the bird. Mike's suggestion is still the best, like is kind of feeling like the best one, but I have to make sure that I do, I don't know, put down tarps or whatever if I let this bird in. Maybe I can catch it. I don't know what I would do when I caught it. It's a bird. It would come back. I was out of bed at 5:17 this morning instead of 5:41. So if you didn't check out that post in the Facebook group, go check it out. Maybe leave a comment, facebook.com/first cup with Jeremy. What else did I do yesterday? Just did a bunch of stuff. Had some meetings, moved some things forward, went to the gym. The landscaper came, he mowed, he did a really nice job. If only he had believed me before that it was going to be okay. He didn't believe me. I know my yard. I don't think we'll have to argue anymore. I do have a bunch more that I have to clean up because he doesn't know my yard yet. And there are spots he's not cutting. Today's not a recording day, which means my schedule looks open, even though it's not. I'm going to go get a second key made for the Jeep because one should have two keys for their vehicles. And while I'm sitting there, by the way, that's going to cost me like almost $400, which is absolutely insane. But gotta do it. While I'm sitting there, I will hopefully get some work done, some email done. I'm behind on email. I'm behind on Facebook messages. So if anybody's waiting on things from me, please be patient. And I'll just try to get through all the things that I can get through. And then when I'm done, I'll tackle a couple projects and probably end work a little bit early, maybe 2-3 o'clock, which, let's face it, to a normal person, that would be a full day's worth of work. To me, yeah, I try to be done by 4. 4 is kind of like my hard stop. Stacy's got some ideas for me. She just Googled finches and repeated window smashing. A sheet was one. Soapy residue was another easy way. Either way, we'll share to Messenger. I could mix up some insecticidal soap with some water so it doesn't mess with the grapevines. Okay. We have plans. Thank you. I appreciate everyone's help. And, it's one of those things that in the middle of a work day, it's like I don't think about it because my head's down and I'm focused on work, and then wake up in the morning. Oh, there's nothing else to be concerned about right now than this. Coffee. Right now, I'm just concerned with coffee. All right. So let's switch over here. Today is National. Stacey says, we value your sanity and sleep. Thank you. Thank you. I value those myself. Today is National Daylight Appreciation Day. So I, Frank, thought we would talk about vitamin D, one of my favorite subjects. What are the health effects of vitamin D deficiency? Getting enough vitamin D may also play a role in helping to keep you healthy by protecting against the following conditions and possibly helping treat them. These conditions can include heart disease and high blood pressure, diabetes, infections and immune system disorders, falls in older people, some types of cancer, such as colon, prostate, and breast cancer, multiple sclerosis. Let me answer the question a little bit differently. Vitamin D is not a vitamin. Vitamin D is a hormone. It is a hormone that we cannot produce ourselves. We are one of the few species on Earth that requires vitamin D, that cannot produce it ourselves. We have to synthesize it from sunlight. We can supplement with what is referred to as exogenous vitamin D, either from a pill supplement or eating a bunch of fatty fish, etc. If you look at cultures that lived outside of areas where they got sunlight, like the Vikings, in every case, you will see that they ate things like cod liver, etc., because they needed vitamin D. And cultures that did not do that died off because without vitamin D, your entire body doesn't work correctly. It's not a vitamin, it is a hormone, it is critical. Every single person should be getting their vitamin D levels checked annually as part of their checkup. At some point, Western medicine will figure this out and we will start doing this because there is no cheaper, easier way to bring a bunch of things back in line. For those of you out there who, maybe your doctor isn't going to do it, there's nothing cheaper than a vitamin D supplement, number one. Number two, don't listen to anything I say. I'm not a doctor. Number three, there's very little documented evidence of anybody overdosing on vitamin D supplements. And it's not until you get into some pretty substantial numbers. People that I pay attention to, that I like, that I respect, that have more knowledge than I do, have suggested that 10,000 IU a day is going to be safe for everyone. Whether or not you agree with that, I have found that as I've dialed in my vitamin D levels, everything works better. So you should do it. John says, I had a bird do this to my truck back when I was in high school. It would attack its reflection in the side mirror and passenger window. It got pretty aggressive. It would poop on the window and mirror and would continue to it with its wings, spreading poop all over. Gross. Seems like it went on a few weeks. I remember trying to wash my truck before prom and bird kept going after it. I think it might have gone after me a little too. Jenny said, 12 months to health connection. Yeah, there's a chapter in the book where we go deep. Vitamin D functions like a hormone in your body. It is vital to every system. Yes. Calling it a vitamin was one of the worst things we could have done. What are signs and symptoms of vitamin D deficiency? Severe lack of vitamin D causes rickets, which shows up in children as incorrect growth patterns, weakness in muscles, pain in bones, and deformities in joints. This is very rare. However, children who are deficient in vitamin D also have muscle weakness or sore and painful muscles. Lack of vitamin D is not quite as obvious in adults. Signs and symptoms might include fatigue, bone pain, muscle weakness, muscle aches, or muscle cramps, mood changes like depression. Let me say it a different way. Nearly everyone in modern society is vitamin D deficient. Here's something that almost nobody is going to tell you. This is something that I started picking up in March of 2020. I kept researching, pulling data, and there is such a direct correlation. I have shared this with a number of doctors. They have all said, yeah, this makes sense. There is a direct correlation between vitamin D deficiency and that illness that a bunch of us were really concerned about. As in modern societies with vitamin D deficiency, and you can pull data on vitamin D deficiency estimates across the globe. Countries that had the highest death rates correlated. So I'm just going to throw that out there. When you don't have adequate vitamin D, your body does not function properly. It's kind of like if you don't get enough sleep, nothing works right. Vitamin D is also is similar. It's not quite as dramatic as sleep, but it's up there. It's a big deal. John says, my doctor just put me on a vitamin D3 liquid drop supplement. I was surprised if my vitamin D levels low as I spend a lot of time outside. This is important to keep in mind. There are a couple things. Number one, depending on where you live, vitamin D does not come through all times of day. Sunlight and vitamin D are not the same thing. All sunlight does not, let's say, carry vitamin D, even though they're separate. I spend a significant amount of time outside. Midday, during that hot time, I try to have as little clothing on as possible. I try to have shorts on. If I'm doing work where I need pants, I'll have my shirt off. Um, I will often have a hat on if I've been out there a while, but try to keep my shirt off because more skin, right? Uh, I would guess if we look at optimum levels of vitamin D, 90% of the population plus in the United States would be deficient. And if we look at modern societies across the globe, I doubt it's going to be any lower than 85. So, John, I hope that in addition to taking that supplement in 6 months, you're going to do a follow up because it takes some time to build up. The way we're built, we're supposed to in in when you're not right on the equator, you stock up vitamin D. When you get a tan, that's a sign of that. Okay, there's a reason that we find people with tans health refer to we feel attracted to them as being healthy, like it looks healthy on them. Yeah, because they're stocking up vitamin D. Like there's something really primal about that. How can I prevent vitamin D deficiency? The goals of treating and preventing the lack of vitamin D of treatment and prevention are the same: to reach and keep an adequate level of vitamin D in the body. Your healthcare provider will let you know if you need to take or keep taking vitamin D supplements, hopefully. If so, they will also let you know how much you should take. You might also want to consider eating more foods that contain vitamin D. See the vitamin D food sources table included in this article. Keep in mind that foods alone usually don't meet the daily recommended levels of vitamin D. Getting some exposure to sunshine, but not too much. Exactly how much sun exposure is needed isn't clear. 10 to 15 minutes of sun exposure 2 to 3 times a week to the face, arm, legs, or back may be all that is needed to absorb a suitable amount of vitamin D. Depends on where you are. You might need more sun exposure, especially in early spring and late fall. If you are older, you have darker color skin, you live in northern climates. The use of sunscreen and standing behind a window prevents vitamin D from being produced in the skin. However, you should remember that too much sunshine increases the risk of skin cancer and ages the skin. That is why taking an appropriately dosed D supplement is far safer than intentionally getting routine sun exposure. I'm not a doctor. I reject that last statement. We're not going to go into that today. People get bent out of shape when I talk about skin cancer and sunscreen. Gad says, started taking vitamin D and zinc as soon as he who must not be named came to town. Yeah, how much more fun would it be if we called that thing Voldemort, the Voldemort disease? That would be way more fun. So there you go. Some thoughts on vitamin D. I'm serious. If you want the single thing that most of us should do to be better, beyond the thing that I think would benefit the greatest number of people, it's vitamin D. If you haven't read 12 Months to Health, it's this kind of stuff that made me want to put this book together, because it's little things like this. Vitamin D is one of the few things in there that we talk about that cost money. Most of the things in there don't cost money, but you can do a year's supply of a high quality vitamin D supplement for, I don't know, $20. It's cheap. And I've said it before on here. If anybody's really that hard up that you cannot move things around and make $20 happen for vitamin D, I'll buy it for you. Just tell me. Tell me where to send. Okay. All right. So now we've got this ridiculous question that I posed yesterday. Here we go. Aliens kidnap you, and you'll be thrown into an arena to fight another random person. You have 2 weeks to prepare. What do you do? And those of you watching, I want to hear what you're going to do, and I'll read the responses here. Ray says, look for an escape. I don't want to fight anyone simply because I'm told to. Okay, I get that, but it's going to happen. In this scenario, it's going to happen. I want you to talk about how you would prepare for combat. Mark says, try and remember all the great movie prison cell training montages and get to work. So Mark's response would be to prepare, to become physically prepared for that. as best as you can. Chris says, try to stay as inconspicuous as possible to avoid the ire of other inmates and the alien overlords with the goal of going into the arena as injury-free as possible. Ah, important. I want to know what the food, weapons, and armor options are as well. And I think we have one more here. Where is it? Oh, somehow it says 4 comments, and I've got 3 comments. So how about those of you watching? What would you do in that 2-week period? What would you do to prepare? I would be focused on a combination of kind of like what Chris said, being kind of off on my own, remaining healthy, getting as much sleep as I can, getting movement. It's 2 weeks, so I'm not trying to build muscle. That's going to be really difficult to do in that short time. But if I can stay limber and fluid, try not to let anything atrophy. Find that balance. Coupled with mental health, I think that would be one of the hardest parts. An alien world, feeling like you're probably not going to make it, like that'd be really depressing. So I'd be spending a lot of time kind of wrapping my head around that. And we got some responses. Gad says, make friends with the long-haired guy who has a hammer and the big green guy. They can help me fight and eventually escape. That's a nice Avengers reference there. Stacy says, order some whistlekick gear with overnight shipping to space. I am horrible at sparring or fighting. Jenny says, learn as much as possible about the enemy's strengths and weaknesses. Prepare myself for an endurance fight and getting used to pain, so attacks don't prevent me from pushing through the fight. Oh. Stacy says, in all seriousness, prepare for my beatdown by practicing defensive moves. I'm not going to win. And Jenny says, Gad, but not Doug. Doug's dead. I love the crosstalk and the jokes. So what I like about scenarios like this is it helps you really think about your relationship to your training. For example, if I was someone who had terrible flexibility, and I knew I had terrible flexibility, to the point where I know when I spar, my flexibility is a limitation, I'd probably look at the scenario and say, I wish I'd spent more time on flexibility. Is 2 weeks enough? Not really. It's one of the reasons I look at where I'm at as a martial artist and physically, specifically, and I'm pretty happy that I'm well-rounded. I'm not the strongest I've ever been, but I'm reasonably strong. I'm not at the best conditioning I've ever been, but I'm reasonably well conditioned. My flexibility is pretty good right now. My speed's pretty good. I feel okay. There are certainly things I would do, but 2 weeks is an interesting time, and it's why I picked that. If it had been 3 days, you're not getting better at anything in 3 days. But 2 weeks, you might be able to get a little bit better at some things. So I think when you consider all the things that you might want to be better prepared in this arena, it helps you understand what is it about where I'm at versus where I want to be, and should I be addressing those things? Now, the chances of aliens abducting you and transporting you and throwing you into an arena fight, statistically 0. But what if we took that same scenario and we said, you're walking somewhere next weekend with no opportunity to prepare and you're attacked? All the things that you would want to do to prepare are still relevant. You just didn't have time to prepare. You didn't know ahead of time that this was an issue. So knowing that that's a possibility, should you prepare? Should you spend some time thinking about these things? Should you make some adjustments to your lifestyle? Maybe, maybe not. It's up to you. Take care, Gad. And Jenny says it well. You can't cram for a test the night before, and you can't cram for this fight in 2 weeks. It's true. But you can review your notes. The night before a test, if you don't know anything, if you've never cracked the book, probably not going to work. But if you've been preparing, you can look at your notes, maybe review some of the sections that you're not great at, and trust that, yeah, I'm going to get out there and do the best that I can. And we'll see what happens. So my hope for you today is that you will take that to heart, that you will take a look at, what if I had to use my training? Are there gaps in my preparedness for some kind of situation that, yeah, if I had a couple weeks or a couple months, I would do some things differently? Does it make sense to do some of those things? What if I spent 5 minutes a day on flexibility? What if I spent 3 minutes a day on conditioning? If you don't believe 3 minutes a day can make you better conditioned, you're wrong. Absolutely can. So go think about that. I want to thank everybody for joining, whether it's live or later. If you want to support us in the work that we do at Whistlekick to connect, educate, and entertain, you've got a number of things that you can do. You can shop for stuff at whistlekick.com. If you want to use the code FIRSTCUP15, you're going to save 15%. We are selling sparring gear like every day. It's crazy. I put in another order. It's going to be a couple months before it gets here. And based on what they're saying, that might be the last order for a while. Supply chain issues. Just as an aside, if anybody thinks they're going to need anything of importance at the end of the year, I'm advising you to get it now. Other ways you can help us, you can join the Patreon. Patreon.com/whistlekick. And if you want the full list, it's the family page, whistlekick.com/family. I updated it yesterday with a fun photo from the weekend. So you can check that out. If you have questions or comments, we do have a Facebook page, facebook.com/firstcupwithjeremy, or you can email me, jeremy@whistlekick.com. First Cup's the only martial arts morning show live on the web at 6:30 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch. I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you for joining me. Come on, comments. Try again. Josh says, I agree. It's the little things. Absolutely. Stacy says, what if I actually got over my petrid hatred of sparring? Sounds like a good thing. Jenny says, talking self-defense with Matt the other day, I said I was more likely to strike with a closed hand technique than open. Matt said he favors open hand strikes. He told me that I changed my mind too once I'd broken a bone or 6 in my hand. Perspective. Yep. Go back to that episode. Hitting people is, what do we call it? Hitting people is unnatural. A couple Thursdays ago. Alrighty. I want to thank you all again. I'm going to go do my thing. Talk to you tomorrow. Take care. Peace.